Well, welcome to another edition of the virtual property event. Previously, the virtual property breakfast. We've changed the time to the middle of the day. It seems to be accommodating people a little bit more. We do this live. I know we tell you that each time we do it. I think Christine might be our 12th time.
It is. That's exactly
3 years.
Right.
3 years. Yeah. Starting born out of our COVID event where we were all sent to our bedrooms and we wanted to keep people updated on what's happening in the market. And due to the appetite of our clients and people wanting to know what's happening in the front line, we put these on every 3 months. And one of the highlights is Nerida Conisbee, who is Ray White's Chief Economist, comes along and gives a macro view of the market. Now, if you look around, we don't see Nerida with us here, and this is the part of doing live. Nerida, currently being 2 flights delayed out of Sydney, is currently in a taxi. You can only imagine the conversations taking place in that taxi right now, running to get here. So she will be here in a couple of moments and we will hear her presentation. But we've still got a lot of information to get through and I'm pretty excited. I mean, we've caught up, we've gone through what's happened. I think big words to come out of today are going to be words like recovery, good, that sort of thing. So I'm joined by my regular panellists, Brandon Worley, Principal Partner at Ray White at Yolimba, Christine Rudolph, Senior Leader across the group, taking us through the prestige market today, Ruben Packer-Hill, Principal Partner at Ray White Toowong, and Nick Gibbon from our Playfield office as well. And so great to have everybody here. We're going to get straight into the data, and I really want you to think about this. My role largely is the role of auctioneer across our group, as well as looking at the data. And as auctioneer, I really want you to listen to what's being presented here today and take a lens of, this is how a market normally works, or I assume we all think it works, which is bad, better, good, great, good, better, bad. That's not what happened through this COVID. What we saw was Brisbane was really flat, let's call it bad for today. Then we saw outstandingly good. Then we saw a drop to bad. And we've seen this recovery, good. And my thing, and I just want to explain this to people, that when you're watching auctions, what you see is you see a property sell, and we're seeing really high clearance rates. Christine's going to talk to that today. When you see a property pass in, I think a lot of people think there was no bidders, right? Or they think the bidders didn't get to the right price. I want to let you know from the podium, and we're seeing this a bit too much at the moment, there's 3 reasons a property passes in. One, of course, is there's no bidders, right? That's not really what we're seeing right now. 2 is the buyers didn't get to the owner's price. That does happen. What we're seeing a bit too much is we're seeing a good price, and owners are saying no to that. And my concern for those owners is they're pinning it against what happened in this COVID event, not on the 10-year trend line. And we're seeing the owners that are happy to make profit and uplift are transacting and doing well. And those owners that are waiting are getting a little bit disappointed because they're probably sitting on line for a bit longer. A little bit of psychological depreciation is happening from buyers. Why is it still on the market? And then they're seeing some downturn, not because of their property or their timing, just because it's sat there for a bit too long. I'm going to take you through a bit of our data, and you can see this up on the screen. This shows you our open homes. We love this one because this is the front line of the property market. Oh, no, I didn't say it at the beginning. I'm Hazley Cush and I'll be facilitating this for you today. And I'll let you know if you can't, you won't be able to see yet, but Nerida has made it into the room. Great to see you. You can see open for inspection numbers at 7,500. That is up year on year. Now, January 2022, that first quarter was really good. So this is a strong sign. This is not the downturn we were looking at here. So we're seeing up, and that's going to be presented to you today. Unconditional sales down, we have felt that. Unconditional sales down, and a lot of that is 20% less stock in the market. And that 20% down, look at that, 20% less in number of sales. Deals are still in line. We're seeing number of sales take place year on year with 2021 and 22. The 2021 was a real peak there. Sales value down a little bit on the 3-year trend line, currently sitting across our group of offices, Ray White, New Farm, Spring Hill, Yolimba, East Brisbane, Toowong and Clayfield, where I'm getting this market sample from. We're seeing average price down a little bit. That's really being pushed by those first home buyer sales. All eyes are on Brisbane and the rentals. I want to let you know, in our group, available properties, think about this while you look at this slide, available properties is down 60%. We're about 30% of our normal normal available properties. So look at the number of inquiries when you're down by 60%. You're like 8,500. applications, 2,800. It's devastating to tell you that we had 146 applications on a one-bedroom unit. On a one-bedroom unit. 146 applications, that means 145 people missed out. It's the really low end of the market where we're seeing this. It's that 0 to 500 market where all the heat is. Above 1,000's really opened up. There are available properties. In fact, above 700, there are available properties. You're not seeing that heat like you're really seeing in the low end of the market. Arrears are still low, and that's because people are paying their rent, money in the market, that sort of thing's happening. I'm sharing some information with you here quickly from our loans friends at Loan Market. The word from them on the front line is applications are up. And that's coming from April data. That's they're seeing on the front line. So you can see there, loans lodge is up on the year on year, so it's a good sign. Words again, recovery is there. We're seeing it as good. Approvals is up. That would include refinances as well as new. I think in there, up on the year, so really good all 3 months of that quarter. Settled loans, about a line ball, about a line ball year on year when you go February through to March in settlement. So I think so, yeah, when you account for a drop in stock, settles, that's really up. You're right, Brandon, yeah, year on year. So that gets you through a little bit of data. I'm going to get us up on the screen. I think without having Christine up on the screen, a bit of a waste. We've got a good presentation here, Christine. I'm so excited. I've had a bit of a look at this already. Could you take us through what's happening with that prestige market?
Yes, thanks, Hazley. So again, looking at the prestige market, that sector remains extremely strong in Brisbane, as we've noticed with our recent sales. And when we have a look just at the next slide that we have here, we've actually got the quarterly overview of the top prices in Brisbane. So when we have a look at the top 10 sales, the interesting thing to note about that is that 50% of those properties that we have there are all properties that are riverfront properties. Now that includes properties that are either riverfront homes, or if we as we have a look down there at number 3, which is Park Avenue in East Brisbane, and also the Two Cutters Landing apartments there that we have at the bottom, we actually can see that those properties are riverfront apartments. Now the other one to note is 10 Ludlow Street, which we're going to discuss in a moment in our case study. That is a beautiful new build. Now that was only on 405 square metres, and that remains a price record that was set by Matt when that property was taken to auction just last month at 6.4 million with a beautiful view of the river. So we'll just have a quick look over and we have there a property that we had at auction last weekend. Just looking at some of the stats of that one, we had 11 registered bidders for that, 100 bar inspections and 20,000 online views for that property to sell. And then the next property that we're going to go back to is this property again in Ludlow Street. Now, the interesting thing to note about 10 Ludlow Street, when we do actually have a look at it coming up there on the screen with that slide, when you have a look at 10 Ludlow Street, I just want to point out some really interesting things about this in terms of the trend that we're seeing with the prestige market. Number one, properties that are brand new builds are continuing to dominate the prestige market. And the reason why we're finding that is that a lot of our clients are going, can we A, buy the inner city land? And, you know, Hazley, you'll say, where do you buy inner city land? That's exactly right. And secondly, the build costs to actually build a property like that are quite significant. And the third thing that is quite interesting about that particular property, it had previously been on the market last year and it hadn't been moving. You know, I know Brian White is a big one about competition creators. Yeah. The incredible thing about that is that we did actually take that to auction, and we did actually have the 3 registered bidders, and we did sell it. Not only that, I think as you have mentioned, Hazley, the sale of that does indicate what we're about to lead into, that the market for this first quarter has shown a sign of recovery.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch. I mean, from my position on the podium, you know, to be able to watch these transactions, Ludlow Street was a great auction. Matt Lancashire, Pat Goldsworthy took that property to auction at the Caliber Hotel. As you said, sold for 6.4 million. It was previously on the market. It was on that market in that period of time, July to December, where it was tough. 10 interest rate rises have happened in that sort of since now all the way back then, 8 last year. So buyers were a bit unsure of what was going to happen. So those sellers didn't turn their back on the Brisbane market, they re-engaged, and they were benefactors of that. 6.4 million. We saw that on the weekend, the other one you said at Quarry Street, and the 6.55 million. Huge. I mean, it was so enjoyable to call that auction in front of Brisbane Prestige Market. All of those bidders, that great sale, and breathed really good confidence into the Brisbane market. You can give us a bit of an overview of the city and then lead?
Yes, that'd be great. So we'll lead now into New Farm. So if we have a look at our New Farm market, we can again see New Farm is actually the #1 postcode for Brisbane. It is, according to our Ray White data, the #1 search postcode in Brisbane. And you can see that reflected with the prices there. Your top price was actually a beautiful off-the-plan sale that occurred in 2020 and has just settled in January this year, and that is with Tom Dooley's development. The penthouse there selling for just over 16.5 million. The other sale that is interesting to note is Kingsholm Street, Tenerife. Now that leads into your comments about the prestige rental market, because that particular property, Hazley, living here, I believe, has just rented in the past week. How much did that end up going for?
For $3,000 a week, it's now been taken. It's really strong to see that in the market. We've got properties at the moment, $3,000 up to $6,000 a week in that high-end market. Strong for Brisbane.
Exactly. So, you know, looking down there again, we can see once again, as we're saying, it is the riverfront apartments which are dominating the top 10 there in New Farm as well, and also some beautiful riverfront homes. So just skipping over to our case study, now I think this really again demonstrates two factors that I think we're all going to agree on today. There is, as you've already said, Hazley, a shortage of stock in the market. Listings are down for the year. And this is a classic example. This is a property that was purchased last year for $1.875 million. Now, we will qualify here that this property was in original condition when it was purchased at $1.875 in 2022. It has had a makeover, and our client, realising the shortage of stock on the market, did decide to put it on the market, was opting to actually go to auction. But actually, our colleague, Carla Lynch, took a call from an interstate buyer within the first day of that property going on the market, took them through for a FaceTime viewing, and actually sold the property sight unseen within 6 days, which is quite extraordinary.
Just have a look at those online view numbers, 83,000, and that must have been because it's sold in 6 days, it must have been 83,000 in a week. Yeah.
That's exactly right. That is actually the weekly stat. So the weekly stat is actually showing 83,000 views for that property. Again, proving shortage of stock, high demand for completed stock, and also, you know, the postcode of 4005 traditionally does seem to attract a professional demographic. Most of those clients are time poor. They just don't have time to find the property, do a build. So that illustrates, you know, just the demand in the market.
Still the theme of interstate activity, interstate buying.
Yeah.
Interstate buyers as well.
Buying sight unseen is probably not as uncommon as it once was. 5 years ago, that just, I never would have seen that happen. But now you do see it more often.
Yes. Which actually leads us across to you, Brandon, because I think, you know, we were chatting yesterday as well about you also had a case of a property that you had sold in New Farm, beautiful waterfront apartment at Cutter's Landing. And that leads into what you're seeing over in the Belinda
Yeah,
market
absolutely.
as well.
So we've had a really good run in the 4171 and surrounds. I definitely think the interstate migrant is back, and I suppose interstate migrant includes international, so returning expats and all those people we started to see come back towards the back end of COVID when they actually could. But we've got a major stock issue at the moment in our market. I think we're down more than what the stats in a minute will reflect. We're down about 31% year on year. So look, I think probably towards the back end of last year we had a big stock issue starting to sort of boil around that sort of July, August when all the media was reporting, and we had interest rate after interest rate rise. And I think when you see markets where they have a generally high level of underlying wealth. They don't crystallise a bad result. They just bunker down and hold. And I think it was much stronger on the ground than what people were actually believing that it was based on what they were reading in the papers. So rather than go to market and test it and spend the marketing and whatever else, they just weren't going to market at all. And we're beating the doors down in the neighbourhood saying, it's not bad, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good. But look, we've seen really, really resilient pricing in our market.
Can I just, sorry to jump in on you there, but I think that's an incredibly good point that you've been making because, there certainly is a shortage of stock. However, I would still say that buyers are remaining cautiously optimistic about what they're prepared to pay because we've all had instances here where we've taken fantastic properties to the market and we've had tremendous offers and those clients have even, spent significant money on marketing campaigns. We've had the offers. The clients, are really super optimistic about this stock shortage and they're saying, oh, well, that's a good offer, but we want a 2021, 2022 offer. And if they don't get that, they're actually just pulling the stock. Would you say that's a fair observation?
Yeah. Look, it's really, really hard to price things on the way into a campaign at the moment. So I switched, 9-ish months ago to almost a sole auction business. I think I've only listed one property in the last 9 months that wasn't an auction. I think our first quarter we did 11 from 13 under the hammer. And for us, it just removes the argument around price. It doesn't really matter what we think, owner thinks, buyers think. It's just all out in the open. I think our average registered bidder numbers were somewhere between 6 and 8 for that period of time as well. But just going back to the interstate buyer, so we had a really strong weekend a couple of weeks ago where we had 5 auctions in the weekend. We sold 3 under the hammer. We sold 1 on the Monday and 1 on the Tuesday immediately after the auction. So just looking at the origin of those buyers, so we had 3 interstate buyers, 1 from the Sunshine Coast and 1 local.
Yeah, wow.
There it is, And I reckon that interstate inquiry level towards the back end of last year, maybe November, December, dropped to around 10% from its 40 to 50% number. And I reckon it's back at around 40% now.
Yeah, and this one here you were talking to, so that was another unit, I think that was the unit that sold around the 2-3, how much was that unit?
Oh, the one over in New Farm?
The one you were talking about just then.
So we've had a few. One of those units in New Farm, that sold for 2.1.
And had a lot of interstate migration, a bit of international as well.
And that purchase price 18 months early was 1.3.
1.3, wow.
And then they did a unit reno, so really good quality unit reno, but an 800 grand uplift is chunky.
Right?
Yeah.
40%. Okay.
That one that was on screen a second ago, and this is one of the really interesting points. So that sort of, I guess we can call it middle market, from $1 million to, 3, 4, 5 million. There's still really, really good strength in that market. So that particular property there in Phillip Street bought October 21 for $995. Cosmetic uplift, so we're talking paint, sanding of floors, replacing appliances and that sort of thing. But to see a $280,000 uplift in 16, 17 months, averaging out at $16,500 a month in the downturn that we're in, I've always been really, really buoyant about Brisbane. In fact, in our last couple, I've probably been the most optimistic around our outlook because I just felt that people would bunker down on that supply, and that's really ridden us through this market. But I think we're all just very, very lucky that we work in these markets where there's an underlying level of high demand, underlying, strong level of equity in homes. So I feel like we're through the back end of it. Nerida will no doubt talk more to the RBA predictions and whatnot, but I'm pretty sure we're pretty close to the peak on money.
The short ball on the crystal ball stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
All interested. A few more to go through. I think it's really important that you point that out. Stock shortage. When we're taking macro views of the market, and you're reading papers aren't reporting on Hawthorn or like New Farm or Toowong or Playford. They're taking big macro views and they're looking for comments that are really obviously, I hate to say it, big sensationalised comments that are going to get the eyeballs. And we're thinking, our big concern, and I hope it's coming through, is we think things are good. Now, we did not predict, we did this meeting, this presentation a year ago, we did not predict July to December would be as tough as it was. What we don't want to see is people walk away from good offers now, because we're going to make some big predictions today. There's some good evidence around the market, but the reality is real estate is very much a now business. And right now, it is not what it was last year. It is good. I'm not saying it's great, I'm not saying it was 2 years ago, but certainly you're going to see a trend line at the moment that Nerida's going to put up, which is really going to demonstrate that. Rubes, there's lots of eyes on Toowong at the moment. Toowong, I think, is that beautiful market. It's the gateway to the western side of Brisbane. It sits on the banks of the Brisbane River. It leans up against Suncorp Stadium. For those of you that are watching from interstate, it's a beautiful part of Brisbane and a big belt of great properties and homes. What's happening in that market? Because there's a lot now moving in terms of rents and units and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. I think what we know, the narrative continues through the inner west pocket of Brisbane. We're seeing a huge increase in demand, especially for unit stock and apartments in that inner western belt through Toowong, St Lucia, Taringa. A lot of that's being driven by the University of Queensland. UQ placements released in February, March, we saw a real noticeable lift in buyer demand. Not just from investors, but also on occupiers, once they secured those placements at UQ. And also mum and dads that were looking to secure properties for their children to live in now that they were going to the University of Queensland. The narrative in terms of a lack of stock also continues. We're seeing most of our markets down 20 to 30% from sort of Toowong, Auchenflower, all the way through to the suburbs.
In terms of available property,
available
not price.
properties,
Yeah, okay, wow.
Available properties. Which will lead me into the next slide, one of our case studies. This is a two-bedroom unit, two-bathroom unit in Illumina, just around the corner from our office in Jefferson Street there. My colleague Robin McElwain sold this multiple offer situation. Ironically, the buyer that purchased was off the back of our Ray White Toowong website, which we're seeing as a common theme at the moment. But this property was purchased for $695, again, in a competitive environment, and subsequently leased. So an investor purchased for $900 per week.
Now, I love, it's amazing, isn't it?
$900 per week.
I mean, to get those sort of steady returns at the moment, I guess when you look at the volatility that we're having in the stock market as well, it really does go to show how favourable property is for investors as well.
Incredible. I mean, great to see us there, but if we just drop the vision of us for a moment, just have a look at that. You're going to see $695 purchase, $900 a week.
Now the caveat on that, obviously fully furnished.
Yeah.
There is a demand for that.
Purchased with the furniture?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so they've added that.
So what's that? That's $825. Unfurnished though, isn't it? Still.
Yeah, still amazing return. And that is what we're seeing. I can tell you, you add a market shortage, and then again, we said macro views where they get the stats. This is supercharged. You go micro, so you go micro on an area near a university with a stock shortage. You got people flooding in to rent less property. Pay whatever I can. I'm going to university. I don't know the area. I want to be close by $900 a week fully.
And Ruben, presumably there's a fair chunk of international students back, so that's supporting.
Definitely. I believe mainland China announced that if you're studying abroad,
140,000.
140. Wow. I believe the mainland China government said if you're studying abroad, it can't be remote. It must actually be on campus or on site.
I see.
So that's obviously had an increase in overall demand, especially for those precincts around universities as well.
I know you've got two other quick slides to take us through here. One's a little bit further out from that really built-up demand in the city. This is sort of to give people an insight of that regular suburban part of the western suburbs in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, definitely. So the case study here, obviously representing with a decrease in available properties for sale, we're seeing a lot more competition back through campaign. So, I mean, this was a beautiful home in Chapel Hill, but over that 3 or 4 week campaign, I believe Robin McElwain had over 60, 70 buyer groups through, but 11 registered bidders on the day, the majority of which were active, fighting it out to secure that price of 1.504. So, again, I mean, that's a direct reflection of how a decrease in supply and an increase in overall demand can have a direct result in the premium.
And you did allude to this, but just quickly bring it up on the screen here and you can talk to it. I mean, this is, for those of you watching from interstate or overseas, you can take a couple of these images and just see where Toowong sits on the shoulder of Brisbane CBD. Leads out into that western corridor. Some big developments there, mate.
Absolutely.
What have you got to share there?
And I mean, one of the probably the most exciting stories coming out of Toowong over the last couple of years is the redevelopment of the old Woolworths site down opposite Toowong Village there. So the Avery development that you see up on screen on the left-hand side, mixed-use development. There's a commercial tower, residential tower, high-end retail, restaurant precincts, cinemas, gym and medical facilities. And my understanding is that's 100% sold out within a matter of months of being released. Now, from there, it sort of feeds into some other luxury apartment developments that we've seen launched to market over the last 12 months. One Earl Lane on the bottom left-hand side there. That's opposite our beloved West Rugby Club.
Yes.
And I mean, they're selling penthouses now for $5 million, which has just not been seen through that Toowong market.
Non-riverfront.
Non-riverfront, correct. But as we step back to riverfront, back to that slide, I mean, the two key projects that were launched over the last 12 months, Monarch by Consolidated Properties, that sits across the old ABC site on Coronation Drive. My understanding is that's now 70 to 80% sold out after launching only a month ago, with the penthouse selling for $12 million.
Wow.
Now that's a going rate of about $25,000 per square metre. That's not the record. The record has just been broken by Arc, the next building down. That's gone for nearly $35,000 per square metre, that penthouse.
And I think there was another record in Newstead recently for about 16 million, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, for a penthouse here.
Yeah, it was 27 grand a metre.
And we're seeing right around that New Farm Peninsula as well, off-plan sales taking place that when they get recorded really change the landscape.
And through that sort of 2013, 14, 15, the going rate for New Farm Riverfront was 10 to 12,000 a metre. And then I remember there was a sale at about 15 and it absolutely lit the market up. No one could believe that something sold for 15 grand a metre and now we're double.
Yeah, incredible. Incredible. All right, well, Nick, we're going to give you the final word before we head over to Nerida to get a view from the sky right across the country. Clayfield faces north, our prestige part of Brisbane, really long tenure in the area. A lot of families have stayed here a long time. Clayfield, Ascot, Hamilton, sort of sitting there as all dancing partners. I like this slide. Talk us through it.
I like people talk about records, and everyone, that's what you read in the paper, you read about records. But I asked around the office yesterday and this morning, and people don't talk about the profits of 100 grand, 200 grand, 300 grand. They just don't talk about it because it's not that interesting. But rest assured, people are winning out there. So I asked Claudia Rocha from my office, I said, tell me about your last two deals. And the last two deals, there was one in Westwood Street in Wavell Heights, sold in 2019 for 645k, resold for 1.1. No one really talks about it, but that's a really big win.
Yeah.
For that amount of money, that amount of profit is, that's a win. Then you look at 5 Royal Street, Virginia, same thing, couple of $100 grand, nobody talks about it. Then I just sold one on Kitchener Road in Ascot. He bought it in 2021 for 1.325. Now under contract 1565. Then in Sparks Avenue, just next to Ascot State School there, Nat Rasmussen, property sold there for 1.53, resold only a very short time later for 1.9. So, people don't hear these stories. You read the paper, you read about the really interesting things, which is the big records, but I can tell you there are a lot of people winning out there just in small chunks.
Yeah, and some of those are not small chunks. Some of those are really meaty chunks, but...
I'd take any of those chunks.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, everyone's looking for the home run, but these are wins, and that's probably been the big theme that when we sat down before this session and just talked about what we've learned over the last 3 months, they seem to be the messages. It's like, we don't want people looking gift horses in the mouth. This is good. It is... this is the recovery is here. There's an old expression in real estate, which is market conditions precede market awareness. Like, you don't know if it's good till it's been good for a while. You don't know if it's bad till it's been bad for a while. Well, we're at the open houses. We can tell you it's good, but here we go. For the bold predictions to find out what's happening from above. Nerida, really interested. Thanks for coming. I know you've had a hard morning to get here.
No, it's been a bit of a rush, but I'm here. And with good news. So just having a look today through the data, prices are back on the move. So it is quite consistent with all the things you've been saying today. There's a shortage of stock, there's population growth, there's a construction crisis, and all of these things are really feeding into pricing. Big thing about pricing, we did see them start to move in December, and we were a little bit worried when we saw it because we did switch data providers. We moved from CoreLogic to a new company called Neoval, and when we saw those price movements, we thought, oh, maybe there's something going wrong here. But as we have seen now with other data providers, including CoreLogic, they are also recording price increases. So certainly looks like the market's back, and I'll talk through a bit today about what's happening. So the economy is slowing. You can see there that all those interest rate increases are having the impact as expected. Unemployment is still really low, so it's still at a 30 to 50 year low, depending on what point you take it from. It's slowly creeping up, but I think one of the good things is at the moment is that even though interest rates have gone up a lot, rents are expensive, we've got very high inflation. At the same time, people are not too worried about their jobs, so that's a really good sign.
Now, I hate to interrupt you midstream, but I know you've been on the plane, so I don't want to throw it on you. But at our first of these for the year, your comment was you felt 2 interest rate rises is what was likely going to happen, and there wouldn't be a third. And it's performed to the script. As you've predicted, you've nailed it. Well done. That's what you want from your economist. But now, obviously, it's always a changing landscape.
Yes.
What's the current vibe? Do we think there will be another one? What are you
Yeah,
thinking?
no, no, not at the moment. It can change. So you can see their inflation is starting to come down. At the same time, we did see a hold on the cash rate. So we've only seen 2 interest rate increases this year. If you go down to the next slide, the ASX cash rate futures index is predicting a decline from this point forward. So this does change a lot. If we have a look at what this was saying, a month ago, it was still predicting 2 more rate rises, but there's been a lot of data to come through that what the Reserve Bank has done over the past 12 months is having the desired impact. Inflation's coming down, we're remaining at full employment, and we also know that interest rates take a long time to flow through. So you can't go too hard without crashing the economy, which is what's happening in New Zealand at the moment. They're almost certainly going into recession. They've gone too hard. But
They went real. They did another. I had 0.5 last month. Wow, they took the whip.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's really getting hit around. Construction costs are still high. They're starting to improve. You can see there that rate of increase is starting to slow, but certainly here in Queensland, it's a problem that's not going to get resolved anytime soon, but it will remain a challenge, and it will mean not enough homes are built in Queensland. If you look at Queensland's population growth, very much being driven by interstate and international migration now. So
that slide there says, and I just drop yours. There you go. You see interstate net migration is on the downward turn, but we've got an upswing in the overseas migration.
Yeah, correct. I mean, interstate migration has come down from that record high, but you can still see from an historical level it's still really
That's
really
right.
high. So
That is a perfect summary of what our piece is. If people looked at a 10-year trend line on it, like what we can see here, it's still up and above.
It's the highest it's ever been, except for last year.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right. Yeah, that's that perfect summary of it. And what we're finding is a lot of those people came across the border a year ago, have rented, and now they're entering in as
Yes, that's right.
purchasers. Yeah,
And so we've now got this here. So population growth, having a look here, Queensland is leading the charge, and again, you can see it on the ground here. Significantly. So that's a lot of homes that are needed. We're roughly going to need around 50,000 homes per year in Queensland. Most of them will be here in southeast Queensland, so Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast. Looking at construction, so at the same time we're not seeing enough homes being built, so construction work done is down, and this is value. So if you consider how much inflation has gone up, it's even a worse situation. So we're really seeing a very severe housing shortage.
we see construction down and migration up.
Well,
I mean, wow. That's not going to help.
I mean, why wouldn't prices increase?
Yeah.
I think that fundamentally that's the driver
And
here.
even that, just looking at that migration on number on the previous slide, that's as a percentage of a smaller state population than New
Yes,
South Wales and
Yeah.
Victoria as well.
correct,
So.
correct. So auction activity is back. We did see it dip down mid last year. When we have a look at the number of average active bidders in Brisbane, it has picked up, as again consistent with what you guys are seeing on the ground in this part of Brisbane. And then price growth. So when we talk about a downturn, Brisbane barely had one. You can see there it shot up through the pandemic. It came back a little bit. I think it only came back about 4 or 5% and is now starting to recover. So it was a pretty mild downturn. It wasn't, the biggest downturn was in Sydney. Sydney saw the biggest drop, but here in Brisbane,
What sort of percentages would you have said?
Sydney was about 10.
Okay.
So here was about 4 to 5.
One of the bits that I always find, as a real estate observer, if you watch Sydney's trend line, I think it was 18% compounding for about a decade, right? And though we have seen a lot of interstate people turn up to Brisbane and go, hey, where's my 18%? I've been here nearly 12 months, 2 years. Hey, where's my 40?
Yeah.
And there's an element of Brisbane is maturing, and God, I hope that those days do come to us. But there's an element of, well, I bought it last year, where's my dough? And looking at that slide, that 10-year trend line, if you just cut the top off that bit and you join the bottoms, it's a really good story for the 10 years, and that's really strong. Units is... I'm surprised that actual median price didn't drop. That, you know, like it should. I'm surprised it didn't drop more around 2014, 15, when it was held up by all those off-plan sales, maybe.
It was because they were more expensive. So you were putting in a whole lot of expensive stock into the market.
So I don't know if that, you know, you can always find your story in the data, but that's pretty well held for the 10 years. All right.
So again, with what you guys are saying, listings are down, and they're down about 13% nationally. Brisbane down on average about 8%. Not as bad as Gold Coast, so that's down around 23%, as you can see there. But everywhere, we've just got a lack of stock. And again, this is something else that's really elevating pricing, that on one hand, last year prices did look better on paper, but then trying to find anything was really tough. So it's been probably the big factor.
But again, it looks like a bit of a recovery there. Look, they're starting to rise.
Yes, it's starting to get better. And look, we do know that when prices start to move upwards, that's the time at which we start to see more properties come through. You know, again,
that'll be the next flow on. This has had a lot of press.
Yeah.
This slide.
So this is based on what we've seen since the start of the year. If that rate of growth continues at that rate, we should start to see Brisbane get back to peak in second half, so by about August. So it's again, as I mentioned before, it's been a pretty mild downturn. It was much more mild than I think anyone ever predicted, and well, certainly what anyone predicted, because we were hearing declines of 30%, which never happened anyway. But I don't know why people keep predicting that. But Brisbane, should start to come back in about August, based on this.
Just before we go on to this next screen, one question there about the recovery. There was significant national press just in the past month about the billions of dollars worth of fixed rate loans about to come off this month. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a factor, a risk factor. You know, I think if there's one risk factor, that's probably it now, given that interest rates have likely peaked and we've got all this population growth and housing shortages. But, you know, I think the reality is that people who did have fixed rates have known for a long time that interest rates are on the move. And so it's not like someone that was on 100% variable at the start of 2022, they were hit immediately. As soon as the rates started rising, every month they were shelling out more money. But people who have been on fixed have had, you know, a year really to get their finances together. So, you know, I think it will hit people because, you know, I think on one hand they've had time, but I think a lot of us, you know, we manage month to month and we don't necessarily think too far ahead. But, you know, I think the reality is there will be people under stress. But banks should be able to deal with them because they are very profitable at the moment. They're doing very well out of this high interest rate environment. They're well capitalised. It's not in their interest for people to go under with their mortgages. So I think, you know, if you do find yourself in trouble, talk to a mortgage broker, talk to your bank. You'll probably be able to find a better deal.
My understanding also is, you know, a few years ago with regulatory changes, people were being assessed at much higher interest rates anyway.
Yeah. So that's a bit of a challenge at the moment. So it's a 3% gap. Yeah. So everyone's being assessed on paying 3% above their mortgage rate.
It's just going to be whether or not they're currently putting their win away or they're spending on Uber Eats.
Which they did do on which everyone, I mean, we did see human nature. They want some fun,
There will be, let's be realists, let's be truth tellers, there are going to be people who come with those fixed rates and they're going to want to sell, and that is going to come and enter into the market. But again, we find that it never really hits the high. You know, it's never really as bad. But to think there's not going to be some, of course there's going to be some. But I don't think it's going to be the hysteria that people think. And that's, again, part of this recovery, tempered market. Things are good, you know, and really getting a view on it.
The conversations that we're having on the ground week to week, with buyers at least, is very much more, we're in a normal interest rate climate now. And when you look at that longer term trend line like we had before, I think we were talking about it yesterday, I think we worked out that prior to 2012, the cash rate had only been below where it is now in the GFC. So prior to that, we were 7% in 2008. Obviously, well, my parents talk about this, the 17% and everything else. So where we are right now, 3.6% cash rate and early 5% interest rate, it's pretty normal.
Yeah. It's a good market.
It's a level, correct. It's a level where you're sort of choosing renting or buying.
Yeah. Not a market that's rallying up, not a market that's coming down, but
Correct.
a good transaction.
Give us a look here now. We'll have a look at the national numbers.
So this is rents. So rents are really going up everywhere. You can see there, everywhere except Hope. Canberra's interestingly come back a bit, but elsewhere we have seen them rise. So Southeast Queensland really leading the charge, pretty consistent with Perth. So anywhere we've seen population growth through the pandemic, they're the areas that have really risen. And look, this isn't going to get better. We did have that big announcement from the Queensland government about how they're going to address it. It was very focused on build to rent, probably too focused on build to rent. They probably need to work out a way to incentivise investors, but I guess that's another topic for discussion. But at this point, it will take a long time to resolve, and really a long time because we've just got that construction crisis.
Until they start to face the private landlord, they're going to continue to deal with problems the long way around.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a few more slides to go as we get to our final 5. New loans are through.
Yeah, so new loans are down, but then if you go to the next slide, this is what we're really seeing is the refinancing numbers are still very, very high. So again, people are finding themselves in a bit of stress at the moment. There's definitely a lot of options out there to refinance, which is clearly what people are doing.
Just a quick one on that, Nerida. With the refinancing, would you again say that a lot of people are taking the wins out of the past couple of years and taking their equity out just as a bit of a buffer?
Yeah, they could be. Yeah, like using it as something to hold on to as rates rise, definitely. Yeah.
All right, we'll have a look now at first home buyers. I was surprised by this, really.
Down, yeah. So, it probably pulled forward demand. Home builder would have pulled forward demand. Also, it's really hard to build a new home, and, that's something that first home buyers do like to do. It'll come back, but we do know give first home buyers some cash and they're back.
They're in the
so
market. Yeah,
it's very clear. And then building approvals are really not increasing to the rate we need them. I've got a few lists today, and I put them up because New Farm is actually performing very well from an inner Brisbane perspective, and it does feature in all of the lists. So if we have a look at median sale price growth in New Farm, it has been the top performer for inner Brisbane, up nearly $500,000 in a year, which isn't bad given what's happened to prices nationally. On to the next slide, looking at rents are also topping the list, up $95 a week. So that's median asking rent, it's not sitting rent necessarily. And then 20 years, it has been a good buy here. So you could have bought in $495. Every time I look there, I'm like, what was I doing in 2003? What's a new farm?
I have a property that I drive past quite a lot with my family in the car down on Arthur Street, and I said, I had that property under contract in 2004 for $298, and they're like, yes, Dad. Yes, we know, Dad. And it's across the street from a restaurant that we love to go to as a family, and I'm like, oh, here he goes.
My dad used to buy and sell new farm houses in the late 70s, early 80s, and he made sort of 3 or 4K a pop, and he's managed to dominate Brisbane. He only kept it, but he's not alone.
Not at all. And that's probably to our point. We're looking at those slides that you just saw. We're going to share all of these for everybody watching online. We'll make sure that we share these. They'll be on our socials. They'll be made available to email to us, and we'll get them out to you. But we're looking at those slides, seeing that uplift. And from our view, especially those of us that have sold real estate for such a long time, you go, this is good. There's people turning up to open houses. There are people making offers. And we're getting inquiries on properties. People say, I think it might be better. Oh, well, I hope you're right, but if you're wrong, it's pretty good now. We're getting to the end of our time. It's been great to catch up with you. Thank you so much for flying up. Any final words as we get to our last couple of moments to round it out?
Probably just more of the same from the last quarterly. I think I finished last time with a message to the buyers: just don't wait. Don't have the really short-term view of the market. Have the longer-term view. I think we're headed for a really, really good period. We've obviously sailed through this with all of the adversity of wars and floods and 10 interest rate rises and a pandemic and everything else, and we've still gotten out with those, with those uplifts. So, stop thinking of it so transactionally. Think of it as a home or an investment, and you'll be fine.
Or if something passes in, I had a buyer call me yesterday saying 2 passed in last weekend. That we didn't pass in because there was no buyers.
Yeah.
There were plenty of buyers. So don't assume it's the market.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dig a bit deeper.
Yeah, great. Well, look, on behalf of everybody at Ray White and our collective group, thanks for tuning in again this quarter. Thank you to all being involved, and we'll see you next time. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.